Welcome to the CRE with CBC Worldwide podcast, Women of Coldwell Banker Commercial Edition, where we highlight real stories, smart strategies, and current trends from women leading the way in commercial real estate. I'm your host, Jenna Hille, and whether you're growing your career, leading a team, or interested in current industry trends, I'm really glad you're here. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Dianne Crocker, Research Director at LightBox and one of the most respected voices in CRE market intelligence. Dianne has over 25 years of experience analyzing this industry through 4 market cycles. So when she talks about where the market is headed, people listen. She leads market forecasting and research at LightBox, co-hosts the CRE Weekly Digest podcast, and has been named to the CREi list of influential women in commercial real estate 3 years running. She's also deeply committed to mentorship, co-founding LightBox Win and Developing Leaders program, and currently here with me now. Dianne, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Jenna. I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you for that lovely intro, and congrats to you for also being on the CREi list this year.
Thank you so much. I am just honored to be included among influential women like yourself. I am so excited to dive into your story because as we were talking before, we actually didn't get into your journey during our prep call yet. So I'm really excited to hear how that got started. So let's just kick things off. Dianne, how did you find your way into commercial real estate?
Well, it's a good question. My story started in the Washington, D.C. metro area. I took a job right out of college for an air quality environmental consulting firm doing projects for the EPA. And after a few years, I kind of got that twinge in my gut, that said, what's next? What else do I want to do? I wanted to get closer to home. I'm from Connecticut originally. To be candid, my sister was about to have a baby, and I met a guy who later became my husband. So it might sound funny to some of your younger members, but I actually found my first job in commercial real estate in the New York Times classifieds. So it was very old school, I know. And the position was for a market research analyst job at EDR, which was also known as Environmental Data Resources. And they hired me to write research on environmental consulting and emerging opportunities. And that opened the door for me to understanding the commercial real estate market and how it works, how deals happen, how markets move, how environmental consultants serve commercial real estate deals. And I'll add to that at the time, EDR was a really young and scrappy company. So it was a really exciting time to join them and follow them on a growth path that led to LightBox acquiring them. But that initially was the door that opened for me into commercial real estate, and it was a good door.
That is a great door. And I love hearing the ways that people are spurred into the industry. Newspaper classified. We had someone that did just an old-fashioned mailer in the mail, and yes, I'm on board with that. I think that's a fantastic way to get into the industry. There's no right path, and it sounds like it's been working out. How did you build this career that really sits at the intersection of research, thought leadership, community building? How intentional was that in kind of sculpting your career path?
What's funny, Jenna? I love hearing people's career stories, and it always seems like the common thread is that it's never linear. It's always kind of this funny amalgam of twists and turns. For me and how I landed where I am now, I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I'm just really curious by nature. I love research. I love digging into data. I love asking questions. I love talking to people and connecting the dots. I think what was really a turning point for me was my mentor, Anthony Bonacore. He was the CEO of EDR at the time. He pushed me onto the stage of public speaking well before I was ready. So as I was prepping for our podcast today, it just reminded me that Anthony pushed me on the stage. It was a big ballroom in Washington, D.C. My feet were shaking, and I got through it. And when I was done, he handed me pages of notes of what I could do better. Slow down, explain more, tell more stories, engage the room. But that was really like a starting point for me that pushed me into a place where I was uncomfortable. And then fast forward several decades, public speaking is one of my favorite parts of the job. And I'll add to that I'm happy to say that Anthony is still my mentor. He's still my greatest influence, and I'm really grateful for that day that he shoved me onto the speaking stage to talk about market trends, because I never would have raised my hand for that.
Shout out to Anthony. What a wonderful story. And I'm so happy to hear that you are all connected. No one does anything alone. So having that mentor to kind of help you and guide you in this industry is just so important. So thank you so much for sharing that. Where you're at now, what does your role look like as a research director at LightBox? What are you actually doing day to day?
I guess, Jenna, the easiest, most concise way to express it is that I get to tell the story of market trends through data. So when LightBox bought EDR and other leading data companies across commercial real estate, it was really exciting for me because as a data junkie, I got to expand the research and analysis of data trends into other segments of the commercial real estate ecosystem. So at LightBox, we track literally tens of thousands of data points daily, from appraisals, environmental due diligence, property listings, and transactions. And I basically spend my days analyzing that data and turning them into content like the LightBox CRE Activity Index. And that is a monthly index where we really track aggregate momentum across commercial real estate. Are more properties coming to market? Are lenders demanding more appraisals? Is there more environmental due diligence being done? So the right way to think about that is these are early indicators of deal flow. So at a time when the market's at kind of a tricky point, which I know we'll talk about later, the activity index is a way to kind of gauge, are folks tapping the brakes a little? Is it getting more nervous? And I have to also say that it's fun for me to be a guest on your podcast, because the other thing I spend my time doing, as you mentioned in the intro, is the weekly podcast, the CRE Weekly Digest, which I do with my fabulous colleague, Manus Clancy. And we really kind of geek out on the week's headlines, the deals that caught our eye, and where we think things are headed. So back to your question, my days are like part research, part storytelling, part translating data into what it means for the market. And the mission is to help LightBox's clients stay on top of things.
It's got to be so different for you on the other side of the podcast now, getting to be interviewed as opposed to doing the discussion with Manus over there, which is wonderful.
Well, you make it easy.
You had mentioned your mentor, Anthony, and you have been deeply involved in supporting women, specifically in commercial real estate, from founding the LightBox WIN Group to running your Developing Leaders Mentor program for over 7 years, I believe. What was driving that commitment, or how did you get those started?
I really think it has a lot, Jenna, to do with payback, really like payback for the wonderful people who shined a light on my path through the years, or gave me an opportunity that I didn't even know that I wanted. So with our women's group, it was a few years ago that our HR department really wanted us as a company to lean into diversity and equity and inclusion and create a number of employee resource groups. So I raised my hand with a co-chair, a woman named Lisa, and the two of us created LightBox's WIN Group. It stands for the Women's Inspiration Network. So it's not unlike your WCBC. And I'll quote our mission here because we really agonized over the words. And it was to inspire, motivate, and empower women to drive change in their own lives at LightBox and into the world. So we're 4 years in, and we've run a lot of events similar to what you do here. And I'm happy to say that we have male colleagues who joined WIN to support their mission.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. And Anthony, helping you with career. I love that there's this opportunities for women, but we still have support from all aspects and all folks. And what are you seeing from these women that are going through the program, or how are you seeing that impact being made on the other side?
You asked about the Developing Leaders program, and I didn't really touch on that yet. So I think that's a better answer to that question. I feel like at a certain point in our careers, we kind of shift away from building our own path and charting our own course to thinking about how we can kind of help others along the way. So it was, I think, 8 years ago that a client friend came to me and said, I think it's time that we all kind of pooled our energy and established an industry mentorship program, and you have the reach at LightBox, so I think you should do it. And I said, no, I was too busy. And I asked my mentor and he said, no, don't do it. Kids aren't motivated like they used to be. It'll never take off. And this client, he was John Ryback. He was at BB&T Bank at the time, which is now Truist. And he was insistent, he was persuasive. And eventually he got me to do it. And I have to say, like 7 years later, it's one of the most rewarding things I do. And to circle back to your question, we have mentees coming to the program every year. The vast majority of them are women, and they come to the program ready to articulate answers to, what are you looking for in your career? What needs do you have? What are like your scariest goals that you're looking for, help getting to? And I don't know, it's really, for me personally, it's really wonderful to see women at the early stages of their career who are self-aware enough to commit to a rigorous program, to seek out a mentor, to think about their career goals and who they might need to get them there. So they come through an 8-month program. And the last thing I'll say on that is for their final project, they have to deliver an elevator pitch. So they have to pretend they're at a conference, the door's shut, and they get that proverbial question, so what do you do? And we train them. How do you answer that in a way that's engaging, that conveys passion, that really kind of creates a memory for you with this potential new connection? And we love watching them deliver them, and they have gone on to do great things.
And what I think is so special and unique about your program is that intentionality and the specificity. When people apply, you need to have something specific that you want to work on. You have to have a goal, and that is your focus for that mentorship, as opposed to something a little bit more intimidating, which could just be general mentorship for a lot of folks. You've got that time limit, you've got that goal setting, which I think is really impactful for the women and others in the network. Speaking of, advice in your career, is there something that you wish someone had told you earlier on that maybe would have helped you in your lifetime here?
I think it would be, Jenna, to just talk to everyone wherever you go, especially now when everybody has their phones in front of their faces. I went to so many events early in my career where I just walked into an event to hear a speaker. I sat down on a table. I listened. I didn't talk to anybody. Nobody really taught me how to network, and I was an introvert at the time, so it didn't come naturally to me. So I do think that what I wish somebody had told me early on was just to learn how to network like a boss in the field. And the reason that I say that is because I know now that the more connections that you build with intention early in your career, the greater the payoff will be down the road. So I kind of think of it like a 401k, but with people. And it's important to note that with payoff, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about connections that lead to other connections, that lead to more conversations, that lead to more opportunities, that lead to more experts you can tap in when you need to. The more people that you talk to early in your career, the greater, deeper, richer that your journey will be. So I do wish that someone taught me earlier how to network and how to really get comfortable talking to strangers.
That's a beautiful reference, and just, again, so on brand for being in the market intelligence that you are, comparing that to a 401k. But yes, it's not necessarily monetary value that you're looking for. Yes, it may lead to deals or some other connections, but it's more also gaining further industry knowledge. Just because something's going on not in your market doesn't mean it can't influence something for you down the line, or that connection can bring you something great long term. I could see this program being an example, but what would be the best investment you've made in your own professional growth?
There have been a lot, but I think I have to say that it's been joining CREi Network, Commercial Real Estate Women, and getting really active in it. I joined it probably 10 years ago. I was living on Cape Cod at the time and feeling a little bit disconnected. So I joined the Boston chapter of CREi Network, and I leaned in hard on my membership. I joined committees. I took on leadership roles. I participated in their fundraising activities. And, looking back, it gave me a tribe of women in commercial real estate across all different sections of the industry. And it gave me education. It gave me inspiration that guides my own professional and personal growth. And, I would encourage your listeners, it doesn't necessarily have to be CREi Network, but encourage them to find an industry organization that speaks to them. Dip your toe in, try to go to a couple events to see if it feels right, because those kinds of connections through industry associations are great investments to make in your own personal and professional growth.
Very well said. I could not agree more. And I would love to keep talking to you about that, but I'm dying to hear your thoughts on some of the current trends going on right now. I know you track the market closely. Where are we right now? What is the data actually telling us about where commercial real estate is headed?
Yeah, it's been a tricky go of it since the New Year's forecast came out, right? And I'm already getting questions from folks about the forecast for 2027. And I'll tell you, Jenna, I always tell them to write their forecasts in pencil because things are they're dicey right now. And there are a couple ways to look at it. One is glass half full. And on that side of the ledger, market drivers are pretty positive. The debt capital coffers are wide open in a way that we haven't seen in several years. Property prices in most sectors have really hit bottom and started to pivot, and that sends an important sign to investors that it's okay to move back in because we have more price clarity. And even when interest rates aren't coming down, I'm still hearing from the field relatively positive sentiment, a sense that the market's found its footing after years of waiting. So I would say I'm modestly bullish. What's really kind of keeping that in check is certainly the war in Iran. That is the wild card. The longer it drags on, the longer oil prices stay elevated, the more we deal with inflation, the less likely that interest rates will come down again. So that all matters. And we don't know how long the conflict will last. So I'm happy to say that the data that we're watching at LightBox definitely points to a picture of investors still moving forward, still soldiering on despite the uncertainty. And I think that's because, they're thinking long term. They're assuming that this period will be contained, that we'll get back to the regular programming, by probably the second half of the year. So, at the risk of sounding like I'm giving a shameless plug, I do think that our CRE Activity Index, as an early indicator of broader kind of CRE momentum, will tell us if the market's starting to get a little skittish, if the conflict in Iran continues past, Memorial Day and into the summer months.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, you said it, the tariffs are real. Construction costs are feeling it. It's hitting development budgets. Tariff-driven inflation is, from what I'm inferring from you, slowing or pausing rate cuts for sure right now. Last year, you had actually said the CRE market was transitioning from volatility to a more orderly environment with capital returning and those key sectors stabilizing. Is that something you still stand by, or is that shifting a little bit?
I do stand by it. I feel like this kind of pall of uncertainty is what's hanging over the market. And to the point you just made, what does it come down to? It comes down to the math. And with interest rates staying higher, that changes the math a little bit. There certainly are some things to watch. And, tariffs, that changes the math, especially on construction costs. So that's having an impact, I think, on developers, maybe rethinking, do we want to move forward with this project? Do we want to wait and see? The labor market is starting to struggle. Home builders are starting to pull back a little bit. So there are a lot of metrics to watch. I'm not seeing a lot of cracks in the foundation yet, but certainly there are some things that I'm watching pretty closely over the coming months.
Yes, I mean, that labor shortage is going to hit us pretty hard. Outside of that, is there an asset class or market segment that you're watching especially closely right now, or something that might surprise people?
I really feel like retail doesn't get the attention that it deserves, that in a lot of ways it's kind of surprising on the upside. And the reason I say that is, I remember like back during COVID and post-COVID, everybody was talking about how e-commerce would kill retail. And that malls were dead. And I think it's really exciting to see that retail is really reinventing itself. There's experiential retail. There are hybrid models where you can go to the mall and pick up your online orders. And there's very low vacancy in retail, and construction has been really contained. And I just saw an article last week, Jenna, that mall operators are focused on bringing back the mall rats. I remember being a mall rat when I was a teenager. And if you're operating a mall, then your mission right now is to set up things like selfie stations or Instagrammable events, like anything you can do to get shoppers to come, to linger, and to buy more. So I think retail's really exciting. I like watching that one.
I think that's great. And also Mallrats just makes me nostalgia for the movie shot at the Eden Prairie Mall in Minnesota, which I grew up in Minnesota and I always loved that. It looks way different back then than it did now. Very old movie, but
I know
I
that
digress.
one. It's a good one.
Yeah, this is a good one, right? Okay. And then lastly, data centers. What are you seeing with data centers?
Well, first of all, you can't talk about commercial real estate without mentioning them. I mean, definitely the hottest sector. The growth has been exponential. I do think that there's been a very recent shift toward wondering if it's gotten too frothy. It's certainly satisfying a lot of demand for AI, cloud computing, the need for these huge data centers. But I think the shift is that there's more pushback from communities about having data centers in their backyard, more concerns about the enormous demand on the grid that these data centers require. So that will inform siting decisions. And most recently, Maine as a state, and I know there are county level initiatives across the US too, that are putting moratoriums on data center construction. So while I think that the demand for data centers and the investment in them is still going strong, I do think that developers are becoming more aware that site selection decisions, planning decisions might take a little bit longer as that pushback increases.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. And I want to keep talking to you more, but I want to make sure we get to our lightning round before we wrap things up here. So without further ado, let's kick that off. Who is a woman in business or leadership you admire right now?
Well, Jenna, my all-time fave is Gloria Steinem because she's just timeless. Second is a new one, and that's the female Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern. I heard her speak at CREi, and her rise to power from a tiny fishing village to the highest level of parliament is an incredible tale.
Great. I can't wait to see her movie come out shortly. Our CBC quarterly values are win together, do right, ownership mentality, and big-hearted. Which one is speaking to you right now and why?
I have to say win together. The more we do to bond together, the better.
Couldn't agree more. What's your most underrated leadership trait?
I'd say listening, to truly listen and then act.
One thing you hope to see more of in commercial real estate in the next 5 years?
Definitely more diversity. We're seeing traction, but there's progress still to be made.
Absolutely. One tool or tech you cannot live without at work?
Oh my gosh, Jenna, it's got to be ChatGPT.
AI, of course, right? Yes. I haven't mentioned that quite much. What's giving you hope or energy in the market right now?
I'll say two things. One is on the market front. It's been a long time since we've seen such strong fundamentals, so that gives me great hope. And then second, on the energy side, just the creative design around adaptive reuse. I love the energy that's happening there as property uses are getting reimagined.
It's a great answer. Thank you so much for being here today, Dan. I've had a great time talking with you and learning more about what you do, how you got into commercial real estate, and what's going on with the market. Where can people connect with you or learn more about your work?
Well, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so that's probably the best first start. And thank you for asking that question. And then the second is our CRE Weekly Digest podcast comes out every Friday, and you can get it wherever you get your podcasts.
Beautiful. Yes, make sure you turn in to CRE Weekly Digest with Dianne. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Women of Coldwell Banker Commercial. We hope you found today's conversation inspiring and insightful. I want to thank you again, Dianne, for being here. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with your network and sign up for our newsletter. If you're part of the CBC community, make sure you're nominating a female champion who embodies our CBC core value. We'd love to share their story. Until next time, keep leading the way.
Thank you so much, Jenna.